I'm a family physician, and in 1996, when I had been in practice for about 7 years, my grandfather made a decision to stop dialysis. He had a form of glomerulonephritis, chronic kidney disease, and had been on dialysis for 3 years and then had had a stroke. And so his life was quite limited, and after a period of time he decided that he wanted to stop his dialysis. And at that time there was very little information available. There really wasn't anything in the medical literature about it. I didn't have consultations with nephrologists, no one really to guide us through that process. But I spent a great deal of time in conversation with him about what he was proposing and why. I have a friend who's a medical ethicist, and I talked through with him to make sure that I was asking all the right questions. And with my family, with his 2 children, my mother and my uncle, and then he decided that he was just going to stop dialysis and let his illness follow its natural course. And he lived in a small town at the foot of Mount Eagle Mountain in Franklin County, Tennessee. And there were no hospice services. There was no palliative care medicine at that time. And so he asked me if I would do that, if I would help him to stay at home and be at home. He did not want to die in a hospital. He did not want to die in a nursing home. So with the support of my siblings and my parents and all of the family, we made that decision with him to support him. It was a profound and moving experience, but also challenging for all of us because we did not have the support of the professionals and a hospice team like Alive.
I think that started a conversation for kind of all of us in the family. I don't know if it started, to some degree probably started with my grandmother who died of Alzheimer's, a few years earlier, but a really more intense conversation about how all of us in the family wanted to face end of life. We knew we wanted to have the ability to have a different kind of death experience in the family, and so we were very grateful to find that here with Alive. Without exception, impressed by the care that was provided, the professionalism. Can't often say this about institutions, and it may have just been the luck of the draw, but I never had an encounter with anybody at Alive that was not positive, supportive, and compassionate.
It was a unique situation that we had no dissent in the family at any time on any level about the decisions that we made. The one gift that our father gave us, or the most important of all the gifts that he gave us over the course of our life, was that he made it explicitly clear to his sons and to his wife over the last 20 or 25 years exactly what he wanted to have done and to not have done. So we came into this with a great assurance that we knew his wishes and that we were going to have the strength to do that. For me personally, a major difference was that we had Alive Hospice this time, and in 1996 in Franklin County I didn't have anyone. So even though I was still in a position with my brothers and with my mom of helping to facilitate the conversation about what our options were, when it came time to enter that last stage of his life and Alive came into the picture, the nurses came to the house, they did the intake, they connected with my mom in a very personal way. They left us with the care kit, with the instructions, with the 24-hour access number. And even though she said, I know you may not need us in the same way that other families do, because we had a physician and a pastor, and our younger brother's a clinical psychologist, and she said, but we're here, use us like anybody else would. And so having those medications in the house, having access to the nurses when we needed, and when we entered those last 2 days and the final decisions that we had to make, when the nurse came to the house and so promptly, and we made the decision about what we had to do and had her full support. For me, it was a very different experience than when I was having to do that alone at the age of 36.
Walking the journey, I walk it differently than he did as a physician, but been in situations where the family didn't have this kind of support in the decisions they were trying to make. In fact, I've seen professionals try to talk family out of decisions they were making or trying to impose another value system on them. And I thought that was a real gift from Alive to us, was that role of supporting us in what we were trying to do for our father rather than being in any way an impediment.
We never felt any judgment. We never felt anything but support, that we understand why you're doing this. We support you in making this decision. It was very clear that this was what our dad wanted and was consistent with the way that he had planned for the end of his life. And so that was very helpful to me, because I talked to other physicians in my community in anticipation of this decision and didn't feel a lot of support for the direction that we were heading. But when the hospice nurse came and said, yeah, I understand that, and we will support you and we'll help you to do that, it was extremely important to us and very, very comforting. Our father's journey into dementia began in 2000, 2001. He had a PhD, had written 3 books, traveled the world, lectured, and as we watched all of that disappear, all of his academic knowledge, his languages, all of the things that had made him who he was, we began this journey of planning for the end of his life and gradually deciding what we would and wouldn't do, and how we would do that consistent with his wishes. And they were so intentional about power of attorney, and one son having the financial power of attorney, the other having healthcare power of attorney, and having their living wills and their advance directives, and having all of that laid out and giving us access to all of their finances so that we would be able to help my mom manage all of that, and as she learned to do so many things that he had done all their life. And then when we finally had to take my dad's car keys away, he was a man who loved to drive and was fiercely independent. And when his 3 sons sat down with him on Father's Day in 2010, I think it was, and said, "Dad, it's time to stop driving," that conversation went well.
And he just, to his credit, he just handed over the keys. Well, I mean, we say we took his keys, but we did not take his keys. He gave them up.
Yeah. He went and looked for them a couple of times after that, but he gave them up. But it was that experience that I so wish for other families, that aging parents were able to have that sort of courage to say, we can't do this alone. We need the support of our kids, for the siblings to be in agreement, to not bicker among one another, to not have tension. I mean, we could not have asked for a better, healthier experience. And now, our mother is 81 and she's relatively healthy and she's navigating this. And we just got word today that they've finally placed the marker on our father's grave. So when we leave here today, we're going to go to the cemetery with my mom and for the first time see that marker. And it has been a profoundly meaningful experience. And I think it can be for so many more people if we can help educate the community about what they need to do to prepare for this time in life. If physicians can be better at our jobs, if pastors can be more supportive, if more people would take advantage of hospice services.
And it wasn't only the very end where Alive made a difference, but when Alive entered the picture, my mom was Dad's primary caregiver right to the end.
Yeah.
But we reached a point there toward the end where that was not going to be possible for Mom without some intervention, without some support from family members, from professional caregivers. We knew we had to reach out and get some more help, or Mom couldn't do this. But she wanted Dad to stay home. It's what he wanted. But that was possible in part because when we enlisted the support of Alive, they provided not just the nurse at the end, but the resources necessary to allow Mom to continue to care for Dad at home, and that allowed her to continue to be what she wanted to be, which was his primary caregiver.
Someone to come and bathe him. The volunteer, a volunteer who just came and donated his time to sit with my dad so my mom could get out of the house.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, on every level, the services were just remarkable, and it gave her, again, that second burst of energy to say, I can make it to the finish line. I can do this, because she couldn't have done it, even with our support.
Yeah. I wish more parents were able to give their children the gift of having these decisions made and the plans made. I hope more children can give their parents the gift of supporting them in this journey and not being obstacles to it made such a difference for our family, for the 3 sons to all be prepared to agree and support what Dad had wanted, as opposed to having these fights and dissensions and second guessing, and so we feel very fortunate to have been in the family we were in and faced this journey, and grateful for Alive's support in it.
During the vigil, when we were all gathered around his bed for those 48 hours, my son drove in from Virginia, my oldest son, and so we were sitting through the moments of laughter and crying and telling stories and singing and all the things that went on. And at one point, my oldest son came over and embraced me, and we were just hugging, and I whispered into his ear, I said, "I need you to do this for me someday." And he said, "Dad, I wouldn't have it any other way."
Dad taught us how to live, and he taught us how to die. And so we hope we can pass that on.